Thank you very much, dear Elena, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to thank you and the VCDNP, the German and Algerian mission in Vienna in supporting this timely event for the CTBT. I'm really honored to join today's event and talk about the main challenges and opportunities of the verification system of the treaty. So let me put the hat of my hat of academic era. And firstly, we need, because I regard this as a question, and firstly, we need to define our key variables. In this context, let's be clear that we are talking about the CTBT, which bans all nuclear test explosions. And we have to be clear that for building a nuclear weapon, there is no other way but to do nuclear testing. So if we want to be serious in disarmament and non-proliferation, we should take the CTBT serious. And believe me, Elena, it is serious, as 184 states have already signed it and politically supported, and it has also 168 ratifying the states which committed legally to the treaty. The second variable is verification system. And verification system of the treaty is composed of 4 elements: IMS, consultation and clarification, confidence building measures, and OSI. Therefore, the verification system is not limited to IMS, as, for example, more than 2/3 of the treaty and protocol devoted to OSI. IMS is also not about only a station, although it consists of 321 stations from 4 technology, but we have also 16 laboratories. We have a very big center in Vienna. We call it International Data Center for Analysis of Data, and a very complicated global communication infrastructure. We call it GCI, to connect or establish connection between a station and this heart in Vienna. We have achieved a lot. The CTBTO has achieved a lot, but we should not take this achievement for granted. We always should be thoughtful about the opportunities and challenges, and we try to make the challenges or turn the challenges to the opportunity. I try to prepare a very comprehensive paper, but I seek your indulgence at least to share some of the outline of this paper, which categorize the main challenges and opportunities of the verification system to 4 categories of political, legal, technical, and financial. On political challenges, I elaborated 10 challenges, but let me just go through the main important one. Promotion of the treaty and achieving the EIF, entering into force of the treaty, is the main challenges. And since the different nature of obstacle in the way of achieving this EIF is different, we need to have a specific plan for each of these 8 remaining countries. The increasing tension among the states, both globally and regionally. Emergence and reshaping some prospect for possible new arms race. Enhanced cooperation among the nuclear weapon states and enhanced competition among the nuclear weapon states and erosion of prospect for collaboration and coordination. Clashes of defense doctrine which are based on nuclear deterrence. Different agenda and priorities among membership of the treaty. And here I'm referring to disarmament versus non-proliferation, or even more generally, security versus development. Lack of trust, confidence deficit, and misperception which bring enhanced division and conflict among the states over the issue related to the protocol. Regional tension and its impact on the discussion related to the treaty and the work of organization. And then the issue of relevance and keeping the treaty on the top agenda of international community, especially after this COVID pandemic, which brought the health issue as a top priority and the security went down, let alone ban on nuclear testing. Lack of coordination and misperception about initiatives on disarmament and non-proliferation trends can make these trends competing and exclusive. And I think we need to have a preparatory work for the MPT REFCON to create an initiative that make them complementary. But let's talk about political opportunities. We have the first political opportunity is multilateral nature of verification system of the city, CTBT. The treaty is the last product of multilateral disarmament negotiation and plays key role in disarmament and non-proliferation in all aspects. Comprehensive scope of verification system. The verification system is the most robust system that international community has ever created, and more than $1 billion has been invested in creation of this system. It moves on the edge of science and technology, and it is all inclusive. The third opportunity is equalitarianism nature of the verification system. It's non-discriminatory and equally applied to all states, no matter big or small. It's also the fourth opportunity, create a meaningful step toward nuclear disarmament in a world that desperately looks for disarmament. The potential to play a bridging role over the strategic differences in international security, disarmament, and also regional issues, especially in the REFCON. Potential to be a confidence building measure, and I think in the previous panel it was referred to. It can work both internationally and regionally. Diverse nature that covers both security and development. That's very interesting because each state can have something in this verification regime. The other opportunity is that the system is not centralized. It's widespread all over the world and in design for engagement and cooperation. As without cooperation, it would not be effective. And the ninth opportunity is that it's not suitable for monopoly, polarization, or club-oriented behavior. Therefore, the nature of cooperation inherently exists in the system. And the system is supporting regional and international partnership and cooperation in science and technology. If we want to talk about legal challenges, it's a lack of clear prospect for the EIF and all legal issues associated with it. Defining also the nature and scope of provisional testing and evaluation of the system. National, constitutional, and legal problem and impediment for implementation of commitment before the EIF. Balanced development and evaluation of all four elements of the verification system. Exploring way to encourage implementation of full commitment before the EIF. But legal opportunity, clarity in the legal commitment through enormous details elaborated in the treaty, protocol, and operational manuals. Transparency in legal mechanism and verifiability in all verification mechanism, which makes every member equally legally accountable. We have also an asset which helps us at this current stage, and that's the founding document of the Preparatory Commission. We call it text on the establishment of the PREPCOM, which create opportunity for provisionally test and evaluate the system. Then we have also opportunity for negotiation of all legal documents like operational manual. So the process of making a norm has not been yet stopped. It's still alive. States can further elaborate on that. And then non-discriminatory legal commitment, which applies to everybody and make every group of states or states to feel that they are equal. And more importantly, the legal norm that created for the ban on testing. But if we want to go to the technical challenges, I elaborated 18, but I try to just mention some of them: sustainment of the system, obsolescence of the technology, background noise, and I'm referring that this background noise is in all technology, reliability and accuracy, improve quality of automated bulletin, enhance screening methods, use of ATM, use of data fusion, making and using robust system, robust maintainability of software, high data availability, modern technology using data fusion, use of intelligence, artificial intelligence and machine learning, timeliness of data, business continuity, and need for fair test and evaluate all 4 elements equally. So, and then, for example, for OSI, we need to test in all environment other than underground, and we haven't done that. We also need to finalize the status of the inspector. We also need to finalize the OSI equipment and test all methods that we want. But if we go to the opportunity, technical opportunity, the verification system is scientifically developed and is based on measurable facts, and it's reliable. Science nature of verification regime creates many opportunities to bridge political gaps. The verification regime is an asset of international community that can be used for civil and scientific purposes. And I'm sure Ambassador of Chile will mention a lot of good examples on this issue. The system is technically balanced and create some sort of partnership rather than imposed intrusive mechanism. The verification system is comprehensive and provide area for cooperation. And finally, it's created a lot of opportunity to be used for the development purposes other than originally intended. If we want to go to the financial challenges, the economic recession, the COVID financial consequences.
And maybe you could finish up quickly, otherwise.
Yeah. I'm just going through that without explanation. So long time areas, exploring modalities, and then designing mechanism to help states to overcome these impediments. Then we have good opportunity for financial opportunity, and the system is resilient. So let me conclude by elaborating on that we have a diverse nature of financial budget in the system, which is general fund, capital investment fund, multi-year fund. So the system is very much resilient and it has a stability. The transparency and robust auditing mechanism also is one of the assets of this. And then in conclusion, one of the last achievements is that it relies on extra budget contribution. And I'm sure Ambassador Klement would elaborate more on the EU funding of certain projects that we have. So it was very comprehensive. I hope that I can use it somewhere in some of the technical discussion, but just I outlined the heading of the issue, and I'm open to further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammad. You certainly touched upon on a lot of different things, and as you said, across all the 4 elements that you identified. We will have a good opportunity to hear from those who actually work with this technology from the National Data Center, and I'm really excited that we have a representative from Algerian Data Center, from the German Center. Ms. Hammadi, please take the floor.
Distinguished Ambassador, representative of the diplomatic corps, scientific colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Mrs. Hammadi Anissa, a researcher on radio ecology and environmental radioactivity at the Algiers Nuclear Research Center. And I am also in charge of the exploitation of the IMS data at our NDC. My gratitude and thanks to the VCDNP staff for the invitation and for hosting this important event. I will start my presentation as following. I will start by presenting the Algeria CTBT profile, following by the establishment of the NDC DZ, followed by then the mission assigned to the Algerian NDC, then the CTBT capacity building, the international radiological monitoring, the national radiological monitoring, the experience, and I also share with you our experience with radionuclide events analysis. I will present you our participation to the CTBTO manifestation, and finally, I present challenges and needs. Algeria, as you know, Algeria is one of the 44 states for Annex 2 whose ratification are required for entry into force of the treaty. Algeria signed the treaty in October 1996 and ratified it in 2003. As the establishment of the Algerian NDC start on 2002 with the designation of 2 establishments for NDC operation, the Atomic Energy Commission, dealing with radionuclide monitoring technology, and the Algiers Center for Research in Astronomy, Astrophysics, and Geophysics, CRAG, dealing with seismic monitoring technology. In 2002, the initial establishment of a secure signatory account with the designation of 15 authorized users for access to IMS data and IDC project. In 2003, we have the installation of our link, VSAT link. In 2006, we start our NDC provisional operation started on a continuous mode, and on 2011, the installation of CBS followed by a follow-up visit. This slide, we can see the location of our NDC at the Nuclear Research Center of Algiers. The implementation of the NDC's activity began in 2006 in accordance with an action plan, including all technical aspects of the CTBT verification regime related to the radionuclide technology. The operating results of the NDC from 2006 feed into periodic bulletins, drowned out monthly and regularly transmitted to the competent national authority. In the framework of the development of in-house software application, the NDC developed two software, in-house software, the MARSED software, monthly assessor of radionuclide. These software allow users to follow up daily network status and availability of data, to have a graphical matrix of categorization level, to have data processing if level 4 or 5 with comparison to RRR, the analysis and archiving of CTBT relevant detection. The second software is the software tool of radionuclide interactive analysis, which allow user to interactively display and process radionuclide raw data as transmitted by IMS particulate station. The main mission assigned to our NDC is to advise and support the national authority and prepare monthly report on radionuclide events that occurred locally and in the sub-region. Within this framework, early notification and special bulletin are issued and sent to the competent national authority. These bulletins include technical consideration on expected detection of CTBT relevant radionuclide at IMS data through IDC atmospheric transport modeling. Here you can see some example of our bulletin, special bulletin.
Ms. Hammadi, I just want also to kind of make sure that you fit your presentation into the originally thought 8-10 minutes. So
Okay.
you speed up a little bit.
The Algeria, yeah, okay, thank you. The Algeria has taken advantage of the CTBT capacity building program following the installation of the CBS on 2011. A follow-up visit was programmed in order to train our NDC staff on some technical IMS and NDC activities, as well as different methods to access today's data. Also, we have the honor to welcome Dr. Lassina Zerbo during this visit, where he presents the lectures related to the civil and scientific application of the IMS data. Here we can see the visit of the Algerian Digital System Network operated by CRAG by Dr. Lassina Zerbo. Aaron Toolkit is a software tool provided CTBT authorized user fast and easy access to radionuclide detection of the IMS station based on IDC analysis results. Both particulate station and noble gas system are available. Here we can see an example of the history detection at the Japan station, radionuclide station, GPP 37 and GPP 38, during the period of Fukushima accident. And in this slide, we can see the distribution, frequency distribution of CTBT radionuclide detection at the GPP station, 37 station, sorted by their detection occurrence. Now let me present you our radiological monitoring. At the international level of radiological monitoring, Algerian NDC ensures a permanent survey on all IMS radionuclide operational stations located on the 5 continents of the globe. Any new monitoring station is systematically integrated into the NDC's operation system immediately after its commissioning by IDC. Regarding the national level, the environmental laboratory of the Algerian Research Center monitors the radioactivity in different compartments of environmental, atmospheric, terrestrial, and marine environment. For atmospheric compartment, we analyze aerosol, rainwater, and dust using gamma spectrometry. Also, Algeria has a radiological early warning monitoring system operating since 1999. The IMS data are very useful for our national monitoring program. Here you can see the national network is composed by a series of radiological stations which are installed northern Algeria and are continuously measured the gamma dose rate. The stations are connected by a VPN to a central unit at Algiers laboratory. The main purpose of the atmospheric radiological monitoring at our nuclear research center of Algiers is to detect any artificial contamination due to a nuclear accident or incident and to use natural radionuclide as tracers such as beryllium and lead-210. As you know, beryllium is one of radioactive isotope measured on daily basis by IMS particulate station. These IMS data are very useful for our laboratory research. Let me now present to you our experience with the special event, radionuclide special events.
Ms. Hammadi, you have
We have three examples. The DPRK events, the Fukushima, the ruthenium detection. And for the reaction of the DPRK events following the declared nuclear test conducted by North Korea on its territory, special plans of support was implemented by the National Data Center. A special bulletin was sent to the competent with a special technical consideration. For the reaction to the Fukushima accident, immediately after the nuclear accident, our laboratory, our NDC conducted a special plan by checking through the IMS data with focus on the detection recorded by GPP 37 and GPP 38 IMS station and look for the atmospheric transport modeling analysis to study the prediction period for possible detection of the relevant radionuclide in our national territory. For the ruthenium incident, following the detection of ruthenium 106 by the IMS station, a notification was sent by the NDC to the competent authority. A total of 38 detection of ruthenium were confirmed at 9 certified IMS stations. At national level, the analysis of ISL sample showed that the ruthenium was under the detection limit. Concerning the participation to the CTBT scientific manifestation, Algeria is an active member in the organization. Algeria participated at many activities. Algeria also held the 2018 National Data Center workshop organized by the CAMENA, the Provisional Technical Secretariat, and with the support of the Algerian Permanent Mission. For this event, a total of 82 participants attended this workshop, representing 36 member states and PTS staff. Finally, I conclude with some challenges and needs, such as the training on the Giant Force software based on radionuclide detection simulation software, GrandSim, the stringent other verification technology, infrasound and heteroacoustic, update the list of authorized user by designated new user from other center of the CAMENA, make available IMS data, radionuclide and SHI for Algerian research for different universities. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mrs. Hammadi. The later part about the specific use of the data and the needs, it's extremely helpful. I appreciate it, but we move quickly to our next speaker, Dr. Lars Ceranna. And I would appreciate if speakers indeed kind of stick to 8-10 minutes presentations.
So first of all, good afternoon and excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to echo the appreciation of the previous speakers can you just see the presentation? Okay, good. So I want to echo the appreciation of the previous speakers in thanking the Algerian and German ambassadors for making this event possible and also for giving us an opportunity to advertise CTBT. And on the first slide, you see the IMS, or we already have learned from Mohammad a couple of minutes before. Of course, the verification is a long process, but I would like to start with the IMS, the International Monitoring System, It consists of at least 4 technologies. So we have 3 waveform technologies: seismology, infrasound, and hydroacoustic, which are covering most of the network, and 80 radionuclide stations. At least the IMS is already built up to 90% of the stations are already certified. And just to give you an idea on a chain of verification and how to identify a potential critical event, you see on the right-hand side something what we call the chain of verification. So we have with the waveform technologies a detection, so we nail down an event where and when it has happened. And in the second step, we try to discriminate whether this is an earthquake or an explosion. And in the third stage, so we make use of the radionuclides. So, and there we try to identify the smoking gun, whether this is a chemical explosion or it might have a nuclear origin. And of course, so we have already learned that to monitor the treaty violations, the IMS is in full operation, so it has been demonstrated very well throughout the DPRK's nuclear test, and moreover, so I will briefly focus today on the surplus which is provided by this global network. Beside the verification of the CTBT, of course, we can use this also for civil and scientific application, especially for infrasound and radionuclides, radionuclide monitoring networks. The IMS is matchless to some extent. So there is nothing comparable in the past, and it is completely new, and it has stimulated the scientific communities worldwide in also strengthen internal cooperation. And so I just want to give you 2 examples on this on the use of infrasound. So we have for instance, the world on the left-hand side, the worldwide infrasound recordings of the Chelyabinsk fireball, which occurred in 2013. So it was a super strong explosion of a fireball, which is estimated to be a yield of hundreds of kilotons TNT equivalent. And it has and is a clear benchmark for the IMS infrasound network. And we have seen at some of the stations at least up to 5 detections of the signal, which circulates at least 2.5 times around the globe. But at some stations there were nothing to see. And what you might get on this on the figures, so you see those stations which do not have any signals are the yellow triangles, and we have now we have analyzed this and found that the geometry, due to the explosion source and stratospheric winds, as well as noise at the station site have played an important role in the detection capability of the network. And so of course we have learned a lot about the network itself, but again, so we have here demonstrated that the original design goal, which is in the order of 1 kT for an atmospheric explosion, works very well. On the right-hand side, you see another important issue. This is the mitigation of volcanic hazard for civil aviation. So at least so there are worldwide 1,500 active volcanoes, which are active within the last 10,000 years, which is in a geological framework more or less recent. And most of these volcanoes lack dedicated monitoring instruments. However, so we have learned and we have demonstrated already in research papers that the IMS infrasound network may be a supplement to as well other monitoring techniques. You may have satellites in mind, but of course for the remote sensing, so this infrasound has been demonstrated so far to be a very valuable tool. Just as I said, so of course the radionuclide network was also strongly stimulated. Unfortunately, the movies isn't working. Well,
I think you need to enter into the full presentation mode.
Okay, now, okay, so that's it. Okay, so here you can see on the right hand side, so what we already learned in the previous presentation. So we had the Fukushima event in 2011, and this time, of course, what is really an extremely helpful tool is what is called atmospheric transport modeling, and this, of course, has also strengthened the use of the radionuclide network a lot. So on the right hand side, you see there is an example for forward simulation. Of course, we have the nuclear accident, and now we want to learn how the radioactive plume is propagating and expanding through the atmosphere. And so we use this model and also to get an idea on how strong may be the impact on land masses. Fortunately, so most of the plume were moving to the east on the Pacific, so the impact on the land was relatively low. On the other hand, so it's another example. So this is an example for backward modeling. So what we already learned in my previous speakers already talked about that. There was a ruthenium riddle over Europe, which occurred in early autumn 2017. And so there were a lot of signals of ruthenium in Europe, and the source were unclear. And here we were able to, along with the IMS, together with some independent stations, to make a backward modeling with this atmospheric transport modeling to get an idea where this, the source is, which would be most likely to be somewhere near Mayak in Russia. Of course, these are two examples for making use of the IMS data, and thanks to this Virtual Data Exploitation Center, called VDEC, all researchers around the world do have free access with a delay of at least 3 months to this kind of data for doing research studies. But on the other hand, so here we are talking about now something about strengthening the capabilities and abilities in performing the verification of the treaty, which is in full hands of the national data centers. And therefore, so in 2007, so after the first DPRK event, 1 year after, so it has been initiated an exercise called so-called NPE, the National Data Preparedness Exercise. So we started in 2007 with a simple earthquake, and then we increased the complexity of this exercise step by step, and at least now we have 10 of these exercises. And of course, it's a good way for all kind of NDCs to learn about maybe their capabilities, and of course in order to understand how to perform a verification. And of course to that it's an important tool which all NDCs have free access to. This is the NDC in a box, which is a lovely software tool which is scalable, which allows you to make use both of the IMS data, IDC products, as well as your own data. So especially in seismology, you have more than 10,000 seismic stations worldwide which provide freely available data. So you can also make use of these kind of data to provide your own expertise with respect to potential critical events, as well also maybe if you're interested in your local seismicity in your region. And well, this more or less concludes my talk. But first of all, so just we were asked to bring everything together in a couple of minutes. What an NDC can gain from the CTBT and the CTBTO. So we have written a whole book about that. So you can imagine. So it's a little bit challenging for me. So because we have filled the book with all the stuff we have done with respect to CTBT, and I also can, and we can all strongly recommend to you to maybe purchase or read this book, which is addressed for interested laypersons as well as experts which do not have an expertise in all these technologies or technical aspects of operating and maintaining an IMS stations. And this really concludes my talk. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Ceranna. Indeed, we could have spent here a couple of hours at least talking about the book, but I appreciate that. It was very interesting about the use of data that you demonstrated. And I myself attended a number of conferences, the scientific conference put by the CTBTO, where a lot of scientists come. And I can see their hands are shaking and eyes are sparkling when they talk about the use of the data. It's a real treasure for the scientific community, in addition to all these other applications. But we also have our next speaker, Ambassador Navarette, who will probably tell us a little bit more about the Chilean stations and the system there and other issues related to the topic of the discussion today. Gloria.
Thank you very much, Elena. Thank you for organizing this panel, and thank you to the permanent missions of Germany and Algeria. Chile's commitment to the CTBTO is based on its allegiance to multilateralism and the conviction that international security is a global public good whose construction is everyone's job. In this way, we have been actively working with the organization, and over the years we have realized that its relationship with the CTBTO is multidimensional, with development opportunities that transcend nuclear safety and extend to scientific cooperation. I will further explain this reasoning. As you may know, Chile hosts 8 monitoring stations and 1 national data center. The stations are from the 4 different technologies envisaged in the CTBTO: radionuclear, seismic, hydroacoustic, and infrasound. 3 radionuclear stations, 2 for particles and 1 for noble gases. 2 seismic stations, both auxiliary. 1 hydroacoustic station, HO3, in Juan Fernandez Islands. Its purpose is to detect underwater nuclear explosions. This station is very complex from the point of view of its logistical infrastructure. It has 2 triplets of hydrophones installed in the north and south of the island, which are submerged at more than 2,000 meter depth and connected to the central recording facility on the island, which receives and formats the data and sends it to the International Data Center in Wien. This station was very badly damaged, and one of its cables was dislodged during the earthquake and tsunami in 2010, and it was a very costly reparation. And 2 infrasound stations, 1 in Easter Island and the other one in Robinson Crusoe Island. Each of these stations and the different technologies with which they work and the IMS have research and development potential that goes beyond the detection of nuclear tests. Just to mention a few, radionuclear stations could also be relevant to investigate climate change, for example, through validated atmospheric movement models, utilizing specific radionuclides as markers, and analyzing the climate impact of megacities through the evolution of the chemical content of dust. The seismic technology is useful to study earthquakes, better investigate the Earth's structure, and keep an eye on volcanoes. Scientists also use the seismic technology to study the melting of glaciers and the difference in time travel of waves. The hydroacoustic technology has proved very valuable to gather data to study whales, their patterns of migration and communication, as well as tsunami and even the fall of meteorites. For example, data gathered by station HA3 was used by a British researcher to study whales. Let's not forget as well that through the data gathered by 2 hydroacoustic stations of the IMS, it was possible to determine the azimuth from where abnormal signals came, and thus the submarine from the Argentinian force San Juan of the Revallo of Argentina was located. Other possible scientific areas of research are iceberg breakage, ice platform ruptures, and better weather prediction by analyzing the incidence of the ocean temperature. As the velocity of the propagation of the waves in the sea depends on water temperature, it has been possible to establish the increase in temperatures in the trajectory between two IMS stations, AS-43 Parapat and HA-8 in the Chagos Archipelago, consistent with global warming. Infrasound technology uses acoustic pressure sensors to detect very low frequencies of sound waves in the atmosphere. As in the other technologies, anomalies that are not consequence of a nuclear explosion are also detected. And this data is useful for the scientific research of breaking of icebergs and glacier movements related to climate change, microbarometer produced by hurricanes and tornadoes, and mountain vibration. Other very significant anomaly that can be detected through infrasound technology is volcanic eruptions, as I was already mentioned, that are very dangerous for aviation, especially when the volcanic ash cannot be detected visually due to no available means of observation or the existence of clouds. Infrasound, together with the seismic and radionuclear stations, form a synergy in the monitoring system to detect atmospheric and underground explosions. Scientific advancement. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, in Chile, there is also a national data center. Its last update was in 2015. The National Data Center has as one of its tasks to process the requests of scientists interested in obtaining data for scientific and peaceful purposes. An example is the case of Dr. Rodrigo de Negri, who used data collected by the Chilean Infrasound Station to analyze volcanic and seismic activity and calculate lookup tables to detect, localize, and characterize volcanic eruptions. The Chilean NDC has begun a program called Scientific Impulse to promote the scientific use of the information from the National Data Center. After these examples that I have mentioned, one can ascertain the importance of this organization, the treaty, and its provisional application. Chile wants to highlight the potential for scientific cooperation and development. Thus, we support the science and technology conferences and have signed a collaboration agreement between the National Seismologic Center of the Universidad de Chile and the CTBTO on tsunami alert. Therefore, Chile has become the 17th country to have an agreement of this nature, which entered into force in December of last year. Regarding the international monitoring system, which was established with a clear purpose to detect nuclear explosions, I want to emphasize that it has gathered an unimaginable amount of data that has proved useful for scientific research, to improve preparedness for catastrophic events, enhance capacity building, technical training, education of human resources, promote the development of science, and a better understanding of the Earth phenomena. It is also worth mentioning that the experience acquired as a result of the damage suffered by the hydroacoustic station number 3 located in Chile in 2000 has shown the need for the CTBTO to have the tools to finance the repairs of the international monitoring system. The situation will become critical during the next few years, as several stations will soon reach the end of their useful life. For that reason, Chile has supported initiatives such as creating a special capital fund reserved for financing vital and costly expenditures to repair verification facilities. To conclude, it would be a significant loss if a system that must be up and running and functioning smoothly once the treaty enters into force, and which has been built to a great cost, were to sit idly without sharing all the data gathered for the benefit of all the state signatories to improve the understanding of our world and contribute to the development. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you also giving the examples of, that whatever the investment the stations you have are not permanent something, and things happen, including earthquakes and others, and just in general updates are required. We're going to move quickly to our next speaker, Ambassador Stephan Klement.
Thank you very much, Elena. And let me start by thanking, of course, you, the VCDNP, the co-chairs, Article 14 co-chairs, Germany and Algeria, as well as the BTS for organizing this event at a very timely juncture. I speak at a very late hour and as a late speaker, so I will limit my comments to the key elements. As you very well know, the EU from the outset has been a staunch supporter of the CTBT, and we have proven this, I think, over the 2.5 decades which have passed since opening for signature. All EU member states have ratified the treaty. We have contributed significantly in many aspects. And we also have constantly stressed that the CTBT is a fundamental and crucial element of the of the global non-proliferation and disarmament architecture. And I don't want to go into details, but as you very well know, many high representatives have participated in many events at the international level, at the UN, here in Vienna and somewhere else, to promote entry into force of the CTBT. If I may offer here at this stage, of course, my personal reflections, the treaty is not yet into force. This is, of course, a downside of the situation we are facing. But, and I think this has become very much clear during these sessions here, the verification system has developed in a very impressive speed and in a very impressive quality. And if I look back 25 years ago, when I myself participated in some of these discussions on the verification system, we see very much how much the technology since then has evolved. And the Secretariat has been able, I think, to harvest this technological evolution to improve and see this develop this monitoring system as a dynamic system. So it is not exactly the system as it was 25 years ago. It has been modernized, and I think it's a very effective and efficient system, as it has been proven in some incidents. We have earlier speakers have mentioned them, but of course most impressively during the DPRK nuclear tests. I think everybody has been very satisfied by the data collected and also the kind of opportunities to analyze this data. And this is also will not come as a surprise to you from the beginning, not exactly from the beginning, but very early on the EU, not only through the member states, but the EU as institution has supported through extra budgetary means the development of the verification system. And why has the EU done this? For a number of reasons. One of the reasons, of course, is this system, and it was pointed out by some earlier speakers, is a kind of a participatory monitoring system. So it is based on multilateralism. The EU, how to say, is a strong promoter of multilateralism, and the monitoring system can only be as strong as all its individual elements are. And this is why all the states, be it signatories, be it states ratified, all states who participate in the implementation of the system have to be up to date in the technology and have to be up to date in the training about how to operate the system. We have spent, as EU, I think in the last 15 years, if I may say so, 30 million of extra budgetary funds to different instruments. I don't want to bore you with this kind of different EU bureaucracy, but altogether 30 millions have been spent, have been dedicated in particular to strengthen the verification system and to ensure the participation of all countries in the verification. And let me maybe for 30 million quickly list in 30 seconds the activities which we have been doing. That's a quite good ratio. First of all, we work a lot on making auxiliary stations fit and connected to the system. Then, of course, we work in the noble gas area, which it's very important, as you know, to discover nuclear tests. But of course, also the system is only as good as the background measurements are there. So we have contributed significantly to instrumentation on the radio and xenon background measurement campaigns. And then, of course, also there's a lot of modeling going on, and the atmospheric transport modeling tools have also been improved thanks to EU contribution. And then, of course, as I said, because it's a system which everybody has to be able to operate, even in remote countries and remote stations, we have contributed also for the software development for National Data Center in a Box campaign, which allows to independently evaluate the data in the countries. Not to forget contributions to the on-site inspections, noble gas processing and detection. As we all know, we have done a few field exercises in this regard. And then, of course, automatic processing integration capabilities, which allow to basically integrate the 4 different technologies used for the verification of the CTBT. And maybe last but not least, but this is more kind of a cross-cutting horizontal issue, the EU has contributed for the capacity building in many of the participating countries and has funded participation of experts in workshops, but also in training exercises and other events. So today we stand here, 25 years have passed. Very soon we will have the 25th anniversary of the opening for ratification, for signature of the treaty. We have an impressive number of signatories and ratifications. There are some countries which have not yet done so. We have been hearing earlier today, and for sure our next speaker, Daryl, will give us more insight into prospects of possible developments in the US. But I think what is important, I think the verification system has as such established some kind of norm. Also, the treaty is not in force. There's a norm against nuclear testing, I think, which has been strengthened, and the verification system basically underpins the upholding of this norm. And this has been very visible also over the last year, when we have been seeing threats basically to violate this norm from some countries. And of course, the EU will continue to support these activities. Maybe at the end, also to mention, before I come to the end, also to mention that, of course, we also fully support this, what I would call scientific spin-offs technologies, which allow maybe early detection of hazards or tsunamis or earthquakes and other activities. And I think this is also important because it makes it more attractive to certain countries who would not see an immediate benefit of participating in the non-proliferation goals of the CTBT. Of course, at the same time, maybe I sound a bit too congratulatory, so I have to be careful. There have been achievements, but we should not lose our sense of urgency to strive for universalization of the treaty, to strive for entry into force. And this will be a very collective exercise, and an exercise based on multilateralism. It is not sufficient, I think, to put the blame on those countries who have not yet signed or ratified. I think all countries in the treaty have constantly reassessed their contribution to all the efforts. And I think by building this trust and confidence in the future of the treaty, I think this is the only way to achieve, to get the treaty into force and to build this norm and basically contribute to a strong and lasting architecture in the non-proliferation and disarmament field. I will leave it at here, and I'm looking forward to the questions and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephan, and thank you for your support to the CTBTO and its various activities, including capacity building. And thank you also for paving way for Daryl's remarks. Daryl, you have an enormous task to bring us back to some of the issues we discussed earlier and maybe add a little bit more. I know the Arms Control Association is a big supporter of the CTBT and the norm against nuclear testing, as well as many other non-proliferation arms control and disarmament initiatives. So I'm so happy that you're here with us today.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you and so many other hardworking colleagues from around the world. This is a great event that the VCDNP and Germany and Algeria brought together. So I'm going to offer some reflections on steps to reinforce and strengthen the verification regime and how that relates to advancing the cause of entry into force of the treaty. I mean, the first thing I want to bring us back to is something that Stephan just mentioned, but I want to reinforce this. You know, since the conclusion of the negotiations on the treaty in 1996, nuclear testing is now considered taboo. Even though the treaty has not entered into force, we should recognize and celebrate the fact that it has succeeded in achieving its fundamental original objective, which is to end nuclear explosive testing. All credible evidence today suggests that only one country in this century. Only one country has conducted nuclear test explosions in this century, North Korea, and even that country has halted nuclear testing since 2017. So, you know, the CTBT is a major success, despite the fact, the regrettable fact that there remain 8 holdout states that have not ratified: China, Egypt, the DPRK, India, Iran, Israel, Pakistan, and of course, the United States. And as we've been discussing here for the last many minutes, you know, another critical element of the success story is the development and ongoing operation of the IMS and the IDC, which has exceeded original expectations about its capability to detect clandestine nuclear test explosions, and also, of course, the civilian applications and uses that the IMS and the IDC has provided. And I would just add also, Dr. Zerbo is not here, but you know, his leadership over the past several years has been remarkable in the amount of progress the CTBTO has made in improving the capabilities. And of course, to those of you out in the field in the national data centers who've been working hard to keep the stations going and operating, and to send the data back to the IDC in Vienna. So we got to remember also, you know, fundamentally, what is the role of the treaty with respect to the non-proliferation system? Without the option to conduct nuclear test explosions, it is more difficult, though not impossible, for more advanced nuclear states to develop, prove, and field new design nuclear warheads, and for less experienced nuclear states to confirm the performance of all but the most basic nuclear warhead design. So over the last quarter century, the treaty has succeeded in establishing a global norm against nuclear testing that significantly reduced tensions, dampened nuclear competition, and enhanced global security. But we can't take the treaty or the norm for granted, given the fact that entry into force is still, unfortunately, some time away. There's the danger of North Korea resuming nuclear testing on the near-term horizon. But we also have to remember that more established nuclear armed states need to be kept in check. And we've heard a bit, I'm not going to go into it in detail, about last year's discussions amongst senior Trump administration officials about the possibility of resuming US nuclear testing, not because of a problem with some warhead in the US arsenal that required a proof test, but because they were considering how this might be used as leverage in talks, arms control talks with Russia or China. I would also remind folks that not only did candidate Joe Biden strongly reject that idea, but the US Congress responded by blocking funding for the purpose of resuming nuclear testing by a Trump administration or a new Biden administration. So despite that threat to the US moratorium, I think we can say that the guardrails worked, that the support for the treaty is very strong here in the United States. And now we have a president who, perhaps more than any other potential person, knows the CTB well, supports the CTBT, but as my board chairman and colleague Tom Countryman said, is going to be hard pressed to make serious progress towards getting the Senate to support the ratification of the treaty, which requires 2/3 of a very divided Senate. But I do, as Tom said, expect the new administration to express its support for the treaty, for the eventual ratification and entry into force, and for maintaining the global taboo against nuclear testing. But clearly, as I think everyone on this in this meeting would agree, that's good, but that's not good enough. So what do we do going forward? What do we do to realize the full potential of the treaty, to keep the door on nuclear testing closed, to strengthen the verification system? I think it's going to take some new and creative efforts and some bolder efforts on the part of CTB member states, as well as non-governmental friends of the treaty that are out there. So first, and this sort of goes without saying, but I want to say it, is that it is essential that all states continue to provide the financial and technical support necessary to maintain and improve the IMS and the IDC. We are going through a global pandemic. It is creating economic hardship on many countries. There is a looming financial crisis for the CTBTO that many member states are aware of. It may take extra contributions from some of the wealthier states to maintain the CTBTO's budget at a level that sustains the system through 2021, 22, et cetera. So that's the first thing that we need to do, because without the verification system, the prospects for entry into force become lower and lower, and confidence in the ability to enforce the global norm against nuclear testing will erode. Second, I think we need to emphasize and rethink the importance of the CTBT's role in addressing the North Korean nuclear challenge. North Korea has paused nuclear testing for now. It has not, however, shut down its test site at Punggye-ri, and it has not yet been even asked to join the CTBT by most CTBT member states. Some have mentioned this, but not many. So I think it's important, and we will be doing this here in Washington, reminding the Biden administration of the potential role of the CTBT in the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, but it's also important at the international level. And I would just note that Dr. Zerbo made a very creative and detailed contribution to this subject in an article that he wrote in the November 2018 issue of our journal Arms Control Today. Third, I think it's important that all CTB member states actively encourage talks between the United States, Russia, and China to put in place voluntary confidence-building measures to ensure full compliance with the treaty's zero-yield prohibition on nuclear test explosions ahead of entry into force of the treaty. So as we all know, the CTBTO's international monitoring system is operating for all intents and purposes. It's fully operational. It's working 24/7. Dr. Zerbo has accelerated the delivery of data to data centers and member states. It is effectively helping to deter clandestine nuclear testing. And it's working far more efficiently than originally envisioned. But it is still possible for very, very low yield nuclear weapons test explosions to evade detection without on-site monitoring equipment or on-site inspections, which we still don't have. So, of course, the first thing we need to do and the most effective way to enforce compliance with the CTBT is to bring it into force, which would allow for intrusive short notice on-site inspections. But that's not going to happen for a while. So what do we do in the interim in order to make sure that no one has the ability to cheat on the margins in this way? It's important that we think about this because there have been allegations by the Trump administration against Russia that it has violated the undertaken activities inconsistent with the zero yield standard established by the CTBT. The US last year did not provide evidence of that fact. The new administration, I'm sure, is going to look into this. Whether or not these are valid criticisms, I think it's important that all of us think about measures that can address these concerns so that there are no lingering doubts about potential non-compliance. So how do we do this? Confidence building arrangements at former test sites could be discussed between the US and Russia, potentially China. There might be some information and ideas that the CTBTO could provide, but this is a conversation that can and should take place. Some of these confidence building measures could include notifications and exchange of information about certain experiments, which do continue at the US, Russian, and Chinese former nuclear test sites, the installation of additional sensory devices, and other measures, potential visits by experts from Russia to the Nevada test site, from the United States to the Novaya Zemlya test site. Now, I've discussed this with US and Russian officials. Russian officials have pointed out that such measures should only be pursued after entry into force. And I suppose that's a reasonable position in theory, given that Russia has signed and ratified. But if we're serious about preserving the non-testing norm, and if we're serious about encouraging the holdout states to ratify, I think it would be wise for Russia to rethink this position. And I would suggest that Russia, if it truly supports the CTBT, could agree to engage in these discussions about voluntary reciprocal transparency measures and to implement them after the other state, the United States, ratifies the CTBT. This could leverage support for ratification. It could address concerns in the US Senate, which unfortunately are still there because of misinformation primarily about clandestine activities by other states. So I think that's something that can and should be pursued. I don't expect the Biden administration to call up the Russian counterparts tomorrow to discuss this. This requires some work, but I think this is something that bears everyone's attention. And let me just point out by way of closing that there are several places where the four initiatives, the 4 action areas I outlined, could and should be discussed. There's the CTBT Article 14 process, which certainly could be rejuvenated. It could be a much more, how shall I say, robust forum for thinking about entry into force. It can and should be much more than a one-day exchange of speeches. Another area, of course, is the NPT review conference, where I hope and expect there will be strong support for a call for action towards prompt entry into force. Ambassador Zlavin is not on the line, but I would encourage him and others to consider that review conference a failure if there is not strong language in support of CTBT entry into force, which was, of course, one of the original objectives outlined in 1995 when the treaty was indefinitely extended. There is, as Sylvia Mishra mentioned earlier, the P5 dialogue on nuclear policy issues. It's another place to discuss test site transparency measures in particular. And there's also the UN Security Council. The UK is the president this month. The UK theoretically could make the nuclear test ban treaty the subject of a special session. In 2016, there was UN Security Council Resolution 2310, which was an important way to reinforce the global norm against testing in the CTBT. It reaffirmed the zero yield interpretation of the treaty. And I would note that under the resolution, the Security Council remains seized of the matter, so to say. So this could come up at any point when any president of the council chooses to do so. So let me stop there. I hope there are some questions. There have been some good questions so far. And thank you again, Elena, for organizing this session.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you also for everyone. It's been a long event and 2 sessions. Some excellent points, Daryl. I certainly hope that some of them are taken either by the governments or by the international organizations themselves, or whatever groups like P5 and others. There are indeed some really good questions that are already posted. You panelists probably could see them on your screen if you click on Q&A, but for others, I'm just reminding that you can post it in the Q&A function. The way we will do it, and if there are questions coming through email, through our events at vcdnp.org, our staff will post them here as well in the Q&A. I know there are already a number of questions that are geared towards Mohammad Daryaei, if you had a chance to look at them, you can probably just say which one you're going to be answering. If not, I can read them out. Should I read them out? Okay. There's a question. What is the best model of ensuring a continuously functioning continuous functionality of IMS facilities. Should the IMS facilities belong to the host country or the CTBTO? What leverage does the CTBTO PTS have on IMS facilities? Can the host country enable or disable a facility at will? You are muted.
Okay, so thank you very much for this question. I think these are very valid questions. But as I mentioned, it depends on how we approach the issue. Because if I can see it as an advantage, because as I mentioned, the verification system is not centralized. It's widespread all over the world, and each hosting country has a role. So the station belongs to the host country. Of course, we install that. We do sign the contract of post-certification activities, which provide the necessity for provision of the data. But this is up to the state hosting station to provide. That's why it's very important to pay attention to all states participating in this treaty, and that's the equality that exists among countries, because the verification, without cooperation of states, no matter big or small, if the data would not be received, then the system is not fully efficient. So that's why we need to have cooperation. We have a very, very good trustful relations with all host countries, and then they can decide, and then they provide data to the international data system. But there are also a lot of questions. That's why I raise it as a challenge, because then there are certain countries, certain requirements for pre-EIF, after EIF, and then we have to differentiate between that. After EIF, especially, there is a requirement. But that before EIF, there are a lot of talks about discussion on whether we are in which mode, how much of the data is necessary for evaluation and testing, what we can do that. But I think that's the issue, that nowadays everybody understand that the provision of data is mutually beneficiary for hosting states, for the system, and then they can make best use of. That's why it's really an art to do and move along all of these nuances and create a trustful relationship with so many states that are hosting, and it's more than 90 countries who are hosting facilities. So I think that's really art of diplomacy who work in the current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammad. I modified the questions that one of the participants is asking about the lessons that could be derived from the CTBTO, including the process where we are in terms of entry into force and its verification system. What kind of lessons could be derived to rebuild or create a new arms control architecture? Just a second, including something like the Iran deal, the JCPOA, a post-INF, or enhancing verification monitoring systems and their utilities in terms of some new emerging technologies. And Dr. Daryaei, I also would like that question to be posted to Daryl, if possible, and others if you wish to chime in. But for you also, Mohammad, there is a specific question about the collaboration on CTBTO issues, and including, I believe, within the CTBTO discussions of the Middle East regional group. That's another question specifically identified for you. And then we'll come back. Daryl, would you like to go first, and then I give the microphone back to Mohammad? Okay, that sounds good.
Well, I think this is a sophisticated question, a complex question. I think some of the lessons that have been acquired and some of the capabilities acquired through the CTBTO do have some potential indirect applications in other areas, but one I would just note is that some of the CTBT monitoring stations detected, for instance, the crash of the Russian allegedly nuclear-powered cruise missile a little bit over a year ago. So because the hydroacoustic stations and infrasound stations have that the capabilities they do, they do have some applicability regarding other nuclear and missile activities, but currently there's no other legal regime that directly links up to the CTBTO. I mean, the area where there is some significant overlap, and there were questions about this in the previous session, is with the TPNW. There's an important distinction that I think needs to be drawn about these two treaties and their relationship. The CTBT has not entered into force, but the states that have, most of the states that have conducted nuclear test explosions have signed the CTBT and are legally bound not to violate or take actions that violate the purpose or intent of the CTBT, which is nuclear testing. The TPNW bans nuclear testing also, but while it has entered into force, none of the nuclear testing states have joined it. So I would say there's complementarity, but in no way does the TPNW replace the CTBT right now. And the CTBT of the two is the only treaty with an established verification and monitoring system. So there's some relationship between the two, and I think there is a role for the CTBTO to be an observer in the TPNW meetings of states parties to help inform that conference, that grouping of what the CTBTO's capabilities are as they relate to the TPNW's prohibitions.
Thank you, Daryl. That's very, very good point. Mohammad.
Yeah, thank you very much. As I mentioned, one of the advantages of the CTBTO is that it can build trust. It can bridge gaps. And I'm talking about all region. And I'm talking about where there is a conflict or a political tension. So no matter it would be internationally, regionally, a specific region, a specific, when there is misperception, there is the trust deficit, and then it would add to the complexity of the issue. But why CTBT play important role? Because CTBT is based on science and technology. And science, what we call it science diplomacy. There are a lot of efforts by the organization, a lot of seminar on science diplomacy. And science diplomacy is, it's 2 multiple 2 is equal 4. So nobody can argue that. So then no matter from which origin you are, what kind of activities, what is your background, when you just do uncertain thing which is clear, which is verifiable, which is based on techniques, then it can create areas of cooperation, and then this would contribute to tension reduction. And that's why it's really helpful, both for the security of international security and regional security. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammad. We are past again the time we planned for this session, but I'm prepared to give the floor for last comment if any of the other panelists would like to speak. Stephan or anyone else? No, if not, then there is also a very interesting comment. I don't know if it's coming from Ambassador Ulyanov or from somebody from the mission, the Russian mission. They are really interested in your Daryl idea of a UN Security Council resolution on the CTBT. I only wish we had a little bit more time to discuss this particular initiative and others that you listed. I think they all deserve a good discussion. Maybe that's a subject for a separate meeting, but I think this meeting has been very long, but is also very dense in terms of all these subjects and topics we've covered. We discussed many issues with both political, legal, normative, and technical sides of where we are today with the entry into force of the treaty, its prospects, possibilities, and also how we can continue to strengthen and maintain and develop further its verification system and regime. I really like to extend my gratitude to all of our panelists and this panel and the speakers before in the first panel. I really appreciate your time, your wisdom, your comments, and great ideas. And I also want to thank on behalf of myself and my colleagues here to Dr. Mohammad Daryaei for his assistance and the cooperation we had with the CTBTO and with the Permanent Mission of Germany and the Permanent Mission of Algiers, co-chairs of Article 14. Now that I'm sure they've heard Daryl's your proposals about how to strengthen their work. And with that, I really want to thank everybody who stayed with us for such a long event and through some of our technical hiccups at the beginning. Everybody, please stay safe and healthy and have a really nice year. This year has started with some, at least after January 20th, has some great new developments, and I hope we will continue in that positive direction. Thank you again, and thank you everyone who tuned in to our today's event.